Hey everyone, hope you're all okay and managing as well as can be expected under the circumstances. We've not had as many as announcements as we had the first couple of weeks of all this kicking off, but we've had a bit of clarification in a few areas over the last week or so, and we've been getting some common questions in certain areas, so I thought I'd try and summarise all of that in one place. This video is going to be based around some clarification on support for directors, owners of limited companies, and people who are self-employed as sole traders or partnerships. I'll do a separate video around the job retention scheme and further details that we've had on the mechanics of the furloughed workers system that's going to be done via payroll. So I'll just clarify a few things for those of you who are, self-employed as we would call it, maybe not what HMRC would call it, and then step by step, what are your options in the meantime, because there's still no immediate support available in a lot of cases. So just to clarify, my suspicions in my previous video proven to be kind of borne out, really, that those of you who are self-employed for the purpose of a mortgage application, but not in the eyes of HMRC because you operate via a limited company and take the majority of your income via dividends, you are able to access the job retention scheme, which means that you can have 80% of your salary. But HMRC have been quite clear now in that the job retention scheme is open to directors. It means that you can get 80% of that £719 per month salary, which equates to £575 per month. And you can fulfil your obligations as a company director, i.e. ensuring the accounts are filed with Companies House and HMRC, but you can't fulfil any employment duties. So that would be looking to, deliver any kind of services or generate revenue for the business. So the job retention scheme is open to company directors, but only if you're essentially freezing the business and waiting to reopen, as it were. If you're one of our clients, then we'll administer all of that for you as part of our payroll service, assuming we do that for you. We're still trying to work out, how we're going to manage that, because there's a lot of extra work for us to get through, and we're trying to see how the system's going to work. HMRC is still maintaining that the system is due to be open before the end of April, with repayments coming towards the end of April. So just to help us out on that front, if any of you are wanting to access the job retention scheme, you do have that £719 per month salary that we administer the payroll. If you could email us on furlough@burtonbevan.co.uk, then we're trying to keep a separate list of all those company directors who we're going to want to access the furloughed workers system for. For those of you who are self-employed via the kind of sole trader self-employed route, a few of the questions that we've been getting are around, can you continue to work because you're accessing the self-employed system? Because, as I've just mentioned, for the employees out there, HMRC have said that you have to cease to work. You can't continue to deliver any kind of service for the business, whereas with the self-employed system, the only qualifying criteria from a work perspective are that your business is affected by the ongoing crisis. Therefore, you expect your profits to be, £1 or more or less, as it were. So yes, you can continue to work as a self-employed individual. Quite a few people have said that my business has stopped, I'm going to need to take temporary employment. Can I do that and still access the self-employed support system? I don't see any reason why not, from everything that I've read. The conditions are that, just to recap, it's 80% of your average profits for the 3 years up to the 18-19 tax year. More than 50% of your income has to come from self-employment / partnership income, sole trade or partnership. Profits under 50,000 on average, or under 50,000 for 18-19, and that you continue to trade through 19-20 and are going to trade in 2021. So if you're a self-employed individual and you're continuing to work, yes, you can still access the system. If you've had to take a temporary job, you should be able to access the system, but not if your intention is not to be a self-employed individual in the future. If you're ceasing your self-employment, then you shouldn't access the scheme. So I would say, just be careful on that one, and just, see how things play out. And when HMRC get in touch, then be looking to continue with that self-employed status so that you can access the support. Again, timelines from HMRC, they've said that June is where we're looking for that kind of support. So it's good for those people who can access the system. It's a good level of support, 80% of your income levels, but it's not going to be there till June. So what do you do in the meantime? Essentially putting self-employed individuals in a similar position to those who have been operating by limited companies. There's no immediate income for you. So we'll maybe talk about that step by step. Just to clarify, don't forget that income that HMRC are offering is in replacement of earnings, therefore it's taxable income, and will go on the 2021 tax return, or maybe a little bit on the 1920 tax return for the month of March. And we'll just see where we are in 3 months' time. So for either case, there's a shortfall of income in a lot of cases, and what are our options? So step one is the grant application for those of you who've got small business premises. Qualifying criteria are that if you're entitled to small business rates relief, then you should be entitled to a £10,000 grant in the case of a small business. If you're in the retail, hospitality and leisure sector, if the rateable value of your premises is 51,000 or under, you could be entitled to a £25,000 grant. I've seen examples of certain councils who are now proactively contacting businesses. So I've seen contact from Cheshire West and Chester Council, and I've seen contact from Wigan Council and clients of mine. I'll also put a link in the video description, an email to the online application portal, should any of you have had it. I've seen a few difficult cases where businesses have got out-of-date information with the council register for rates purposes, and it seems as though the council staff are viewing things in a kind of commercial way and trying to get to the root of the problem. So far so good with that one. If you're if you think you might qualify for the small business rates relief, then that's clearly going to be your first port of call in trying to get that £10,000 or £25,000 grant into the business. It is a grant, it's not a loan, you don't have to pay it back. Failing that, if essentially your income is all dried up or disappeared overnight, then I think the next step would be the universal tax credit system. They've relaxed some of the application rules. I think they've increased certain allowances to allow certain people to access it who couldn't previously. And I think the amount the basic allowance might have been increased by about £20 a week, but I'm not an expert in the universal tax credit system. What I'll do is I'll put another couple of links in the email and video description to there's an online benefits calculator where you can put in all your details and see what support might be available, and I'll put a link into the actual tax credit claim, because all of this stuff is better done online when you're dealing with HMRC and the government. From what I'm hearing, that applications are still taking 5 weeks or plus, but what the government are probably doing is putting more and more resource into these areas, and hopefully that'll speed up the application process. So grants is step one, probably universal credit step two. In the meantime, I've heard of a lot of success stories from clients on getting relief from landlords, from banks and from credit cards. And this applies really, if you think about it, to both personal circumstance and business circumstances. So, banks should, have had government support to start offering repayment holidays on mortgages. I've seen a variety of solutions dependent upon the bank. Some are just offering capital repayment. Some have offered full repayment holidays. Landlords can't evict tenants for 3 months, so you should be liaising with landlords both on a personal and business level. And I've had clients who've fed back to me that they've spoken to credit card companies and have arranged for payment holidays, again across all institutions, different businesses in different ways. So I've seen different levels of success. So in the meantime, it might be worth being proactive with some of those commitments and maybe see what might be possible there. HMRC have been very clear on deferral of VAT and taxes, so that's a useful step to take. Any VAT bills, for those of you who are VAT registered, you've got coming due, any VAT bill that falls due between the 20th or 22nd of March and the end of June, so that will be the February, March and April quarters. You can automatically defer the payment of that until 31st of Jan next year. So what that would enable, till the end of the tax year, not next year, 31st of Jan is for the tax payment. So you've got up until the end of the tax year to defer the VAT payment that you might be making right now or any time over the next couple of months. You don't have to contact HMRC, you don't have to liaise with them to defer it. You can just, file your VAT return as normal. So that's important. Make sure to file a VAT return and just pay that VAT when you feel you might be able to. For those of you who pay VAT by direct debit and want to defer, you do need to take some action in that you should cancel the direct debit for now. Otherwise, HMRC will take it as normal and then reinstate it when you're ready to go back on the direct debit system for payment. So yeah, I would suggest that those of you who aren't as affected as us and can afford to pay, then by all means do so. Keep your direct debit running or make payment as usual, and make sure you file your VAT returns. I wouldn't defer filing the return. That wouldn't be a smart thing to do. Those of you who are self-employed and have got payment on account due in July, again, you can automatically defer that payment until 31st of January next year. So I was getting confused. So you don't need to contact HMRC, you don't need to do anything, you can just defer that payment on account. One of the positive things that we've had clarification on is that applies to anybody within the self-assessment system. So you don't have to just be a sole trader or partnership to defer that payment. If you're a company director with who's got to pay a payment on account towards your income tax and dividends, you can defer that payment. So again, even prior to this crisis hitting all of us, you probably had, or hopefully might have had, some money set aside for making VAT or tax payments, and you can defer those now into next year and maybe use some of that to help bridge that gap until the self-employment support comes through, or until you adapt and get the business back on track. Any other taxes, for example, corporation tax, predominantly for those of you who are trading through limited companies, HMRC have expanded the time to pay system and the resource they put into the time to pay system. So again, I'll put the phone number in the video description /email, and you can contact those and look to get extended terms on when you might be paying corporation tax. And I would think that would apply for PAYE as well. So having gone through each of those kind of grant, deferral, government support measures, obviously the one final step that you might want to look at would be the Corona Business Interruption Loan Scheme for small businesses, which I've touched on in a previous video. I've heard very mixed pieces of feedback from various sources on the scheme. I've heard some real good success cases where I think NatWest specifically have had a lot of praise because they're not asking for personal guarantees. I don't know about other banks, but so I've heard some pretty decent sized loan applications being approved by major banks with relatively low interest and no personal guarantees. And I've heard other cases where if it's they are ultimately going to pick the cases that work best for them. So those people who might not fit the lending criteria as well as others onto that kind of secondary market, which a lot of those lenders are asking for PGs, even though the loans are government backed, as in the capital is guaranteed by the government, not provided by the government. So I've heard some cases where the application process hasn't been that great, and the interest rates have been expensive and PGs are required. So people haven't had a good an experience. So I think the only way to really approach this is to apply as you would any other loan. Go to your own bank first. Speak to us if you want to go via a broker or broker yourself. But they're all going to want there's a set list of questions which I won't go through here, but there's a set amount of criteria. They want certain level of information about turnover and employee numbers, purpose of the loan, when do you expect the business to return to normal, and that kind of thing. So it's a standard loan application, statement of asset and liabilities for directors, last 2 or 3 years accounts, cash flow forecast projection for the next 12 months and beyond potentially. So the government is paying the interest and the fees for the first year, which is good. That's a positive sign, but I think it's a case of just trying to access the system if you can and see where we go. I would think that it's improving. There seems to be everybody's adapting, and the lenders are adapting, and money is getting out of the door, as it were, quicker now. So I think things will improve on that front, but it's still not the be all and end all. But it might bridge that gap for you. One other minor point we've got clarification, and we've accessed this system, is that Companies House of allowing businesses who are yet to file their accounts to have a 3-month extension to the filing deadline for your accounts. Very simple online process. We've done it. You access the link, which I'll put in the video description. You put in the reason for the delay is due to the COVID-19 crisis, and they'll automatically give you a 3-month extension. As I've said before, I wouldn't use that if I were you. If you unless it's absolutely necessary at times like this, I would typically advise my clients that you should know where you are with regards to cash, tax position, etc. I would say that as an accountant, wouldn't So if you can file your accounts and you know, maybe you've got the time to do that right now, then let's get that done and find out where you are. Whereas if you're firefighting like a lot of us are, then you might want to get that breathing space by applying for the extension. So let us know if you need any support with that, or you can access it yourself very simply using the link I'll provide. But let us know if you do so by all means. So there's quite a lot of stuff there really. I'll put links to all of the sort of support measures that I've mentioned in this video with the video, and I'll also put a link to the you know, government website, which is a one-stop shop for all the various support measures and all the specifics and details about how people might want to access them. So that's it for now, and I will speak to you all soon, and hope you're all as well as can be, as I said at the start of the video. Speak to you soon. Bye.